Bertha Henson is a semi-retired journalist who worked at Singapore Press Holdings from 1986 to 2012 and later served as an associate professor at NUS. Best known for her incisive commentary on politics, she remains active on current affairs and journalism on her blog and Facebook. Based on these few podcasts, this is a summary of her views. Keep in mind that this is only one perspective. For example, some people say that she speaks free only after she left SPH. But for me, her unanswered questions are interesting because they tell us about the systemic gaps in Singapore's journalism and governance. After all, if a veteran journalist struggles to get answers, then what hope do ordinary citizens have? Well, Bertha Henson doesn't mince words. In his interview, she said that Singapore's journalism has gone off the cliff, and that the media today relies too heavily on regurgitating official quotes and press releases instead of digging deeper. For instance, for the Income Alliance deal, which was blocked by the government, journalists failed to ask basic questions like, what's next for income now that the deal is blocked? And for the EBRC report, it was mentioned that certain things about the GRCs and SMCs should be kept the same. But journalists failed to question the rationale behind this, or even how MP to voter ratios were determined in the first place. She laments the lack of ground reporting, especially for cost of living which does not receive enough coverage. Although we do have official numbers like CPI and core inflation, Bertha wanted more ground coverage, such as going to Toa Payoh hawker centres to ask if stallholders have raised their prices in the last 6 months, or coverage of the impact of raised GSTs. Additionally, despite being taxpayer funded, SPH Media's operations lack transparency, with their KPIs only being reported to the government, which is a regression from its days as a listed company. And even before these podcasts, Bertha has highlighted a worrying trend, that the government often answers questions for the media instead of letting journalists hold power to account. Although it's natural for newsmakers to not want to give answers, it is part of a journalist's job to persuade them for it. However, she warns that the growing sentiment of treating questions as an indictment or accusatory is not good for Singapore. If we have a situation where the media only uses government narratives instead of public sentiments, this creates a disconnect that leaves citizens ill-equipped to engage critically. And for many issues, she thinks that we don't have enough information to even frame proper questions for honest conversations. For example, there are the cases like Rideout Road and Tan Chuan Jin's extramarital affair. Rideout Road, she argues, concerns the integrity of the government. Did officials abuse power for personal gain? And TCJ's scandal wasn't just about infidelity, but the government's secrecy in handling it. She says that they hid plans to boot the speaker out, and that since the other party was an MP, there was a conflict of interest enough to warrant a committee of privileges. On leadership, while she praises the 4G's leadership progress on certain issues such as ageing and unemployment insurance, Bertha thinks they lack bold economic visions. They are repeating old ideas such as attracting MNCs and investments instead of fostering homegrown innovation. Even the presidency feels formulated, calibrated to ensure a certain type of candidate wins. And as the civil service is the main source of talent pool for our governing elite, with people brought up in the same system, there is groupthink and a lack of fresh ideas. Exceptions like Tan See Leng, who is an accomplished medical practitioner and entrepreneur, are rare. And the government's focus on continuity, Bertha argues, have made Singapore's policies too layered and complex to the point of being counterproductive. Healthcare is a prime example, with many people not understanding the various national health insurance plans. The complexity of these plans demand trust from the citizens, which leave us vulnerable if the system's stewards falter. Blind trust demands a lot from the people, as it's telling us not to think. This 2021 blog post perhaps clarify her position on trust better. It is not enough to simply say that it is the right choice or decision. You need to say why, show why, and even acknowledge that you could be wrong, but this is the best bet for the country. In other words, Bertha wants more transparency and better communication in the decision-making process. In the closing of this article, she also cautions supporters of PAP that demanding unquestioning trust could instead reduce the reservoir of trust. On that note, Bertha also laments Singapore's non-existent public debate culture. For example, the university student debates, like in the Balakrishnan clip, don't exist anymore. Debate outside of parliament is now non-existent. She critiques the PAP's dominance in civic spaces as well, such as consumer groups are led by MPs and the unions are tied to NTUC. Again, this goes back to the lack of fresh ideas. Although she recognizes that it is normal for sitting governments to be unfair to opposition ideas and parties, she argues that people need to perceive that there is a fair shot before these ideas come in. For instance, if we had stronger opposition for check and balances, there would have been better communication in the NRIC saga, resulting in less backlash. And to close this, there are recurring themes about opacity, complacency, and complexity in Singapore politics. We don't find many answers in Bertha's rants, but it's clear that she wants us to ask better questions. So perhaps the next time we read a press release, we should ask, what is not being said here?